let's talk about Neko, which is the health test that everyone is talking about. It's got massive waiting lists, it costs about £300, it's already grown to 4 UK locations and still growing. I've tried it, let's talk about whether it's worth it and what it really involves. So what is Neko and what space does it sit in? Neko sits firmly in the preventative health space. If you're interested in checking what's going on with your health in a preventative health kind of way, your options are, if you're over 40, you can have an NHS health check in the UK. You could pay £500 to £1,000 for a Bupa test, or £5,000 upwards if you're thinking about Harley Street. So what Neko is trying to do is bring that price point down into something that's much more accessible and convenient and quick. And the interesting thing to me is that they've taken something very clinical and made it really, really desirable. The way they've made it desirable is by making the whole experience feel pretty luxurious and pretty premium. They released the appointments in batches so that you get a limited time to bag that place, a bit like a Glastonbury ticket, which makes it feel more desirable. You get an hour-long appointment in which time you have a really high-tech experience from the waiting room all the way through to the body check and the GP appointment afterwards. They take something like 2,000 pictures of your body, tracking all of your moles, and then they consider a whole host of other body markers, and it's really, really comprehensive, from blood-based markers through to lifestyle, etc. It feels very considered, it feels very holistic, and it feels extremely tech-enabled. And it's that tech that makes the experience much quicker. You get the blood results back in your appointment time rather than waiting for weeks as per a normal GP appointment. It feels really guided and sort of concierge level service as well. You're guided through that whole experience by what they call an operator, who's very discreet even when you're taking your clothes off. And then you have a one-to-one appointment at the end with a GP. And that's what's really special about this experience, is the way they guide you through it. Considering just how many biomarkers they are tracking, they manage to simplify the experience brilliantly. It helps having that operator walking you through it and having so much dedicated time with a GP at the end, because when else do you get the opportunity to talk to a GP about how you can stay healthy or get healthier rather than how they can treat something that's wrong with you? That's the real difference with Neko, is that focus on health, not on illness. And that GP talks you through things in a way that really makes sense to you, because they can really tailor the way they're giving that information. And that, again, is the real Neko difference. They're really tailoring everything and making it feel really custom to you. So you leave with a really clear picture of your health and what you can do to actually improve it. We know that the NHS is all about preventative healthcare, or at least that's what they say in the 10-year plan. However, this level of experience feels like what's needed if we're actually going to move towards that preventative space, because it's focusing again on the markers of good health and not on avoiding illness. So what I felt through that experience is I felt really empowered with information. I felt reminded that I should be doing more exercise, that I should be eating more of the right things. I didn't feel told off. I just felt like I was reminded to move in the right direction. So clearly I'm a particular type of person. I'm very health interested. I'm pretty articulate when it comes to my own health. I'm a health optimizer in terms of my personality profile. And the people who were sat in the waiting room at Neko were all very much like me. I asked the receptionist and she told me that it's mostly women who are taking the Neko tests. And when men come, they're often coming because they're being dragged along by a woman, which is pretty stereotypical, but I can imagine to be true. But because of that, there's probably quite a lot of well people who do the Neko test who are only going to get more well, which obviously is heightening health disparities. What I found really useful is I felt really empowered by the information that I had. I felt reminded, not told off, but reminded to use that information to make myself more healthy, to do more exercise, to do more strength training, etc. Not because, again, I was ill or because I was being told off, but because I knew that I was in a setting that was all around how I could be my best and most healthy version of myself. And the information just backed that up. And it can be a really overwhelming amount of data when you're doing something like this kind of test, but the way that it presented was really great. I felt like I was guided through it. The use of the AI scribe was also really helpful. They asked my permission for that, and I was really glad that I agreed to it, because it gave me a really brilliant level of information that I could look back on afterwards and think about the information in a different way. They give you access to a portal afterwards and they show you all the results of your scan, which is a horrifyingly graphic hologram of your own body, which is very, very accurate, and all the blood test results, etc., so that you could take them to your GP if you wanted to. So if something a bit suspicious comes up, you can take the information from your Neko scan and use it in primary care. I really felt reassured by the level of information and I didn't feel overwhelmed, which is probably quite likely given the amount of markers that they're tracking here. The only downside for me, other than the expense, because I realised that 300 quid is not accessible for everybody, so I'm aware that I'm quite privileged to be able to afford to do that myself. The other downside for me was that the time was really running over. My appointment was at 4:30, so clearly they were running behind, and my appointment started 30 minutes late, which meant that I just felt a bit rushed towards the end with the GP. There were things that I probably would have liked to have asked him that I didn't. However, to their absolute credit, they flagged it with me. They emailed me afterwards and actually gave me a refund because of the appointment running over, which I didn't ask for. They just did it off their own back, which is obviously great from a reputational point of view. And I think it's testament to the whole experience that I would absolutely rebook for a Neko test again in a year's time. You get a discount if you book it on the day, which is obviously really smart from the point of view of making sure you get the repeat business. But I'd rather just book it at a time that suits me nearer to the time. And it didn't feel too salesy. And I think that was really important when you're trying to get that kind of premium brand experience. Neko managed that really, really well through the whole waiting room and the smell and the way that your data was used, even to what people were wearing. It really felt like a very considered experience, and it not feeling too salesy was really important in kind of making sure that came through to every element of that process. When it comes to trust and credibility, it's so important with something like Neko that it feels very, very safe because you're giving them a huge amount of data and you can't help but be aware of that no matter how data savvy or not you might be. But that experience feels very, very trustworthy. They've done a great job of really elevating those markers of trust throughout the brand experience. And because it feels very medical, it really emphasizes that level of trust and credibility that you feel. And I think that's really important for something like this, given, again, the amount of data that you're giving over. They're also very clear about how your data is used to help inform your recommendations around your health. What was a bit less clear was how your data is used beyond that. They do give you, in the waiting room, they give you a disclosure form that talks about how your data is used, but actually I didn't really pay that enough attention because of the experience, because of where I was, and because we were running a bit late. So I do feel that in hindsight, I wish I'd given it a bit more attention, and I think it probably would be ideal if they could prompt that more through the sign-up process and whilst you're waiting for your appointment. So if you're wondering if Neko is right for you, I'd say it's absolutely for someone who's really interested in preventative health, wondering how you can make the most of your health and the most of your lifestyle, or how you could change your lifestyle to improve those key health markers. If you want one-to-one time with a GP, maybe you're feeling like you're not getting enough in your 9-minute appointment through the NHS, this is absolutely a great experience to consider. So my overall verdict is that I was really, really impressed by Neko. I paid for this myself, so I'm in no way biased here, and I would do it again, and I would really recommend friends and family to try the Neko test as well. I think for 300 quid, I think you get a lot for your money. I've tried lots of at-home diagnostics, and for 80 or 150 quid, you do not get as much as you get for a £300 test via Neko. It's really worth paying extra. I do think the downsides, and I've said this to a friend, is that if you're someone who is overwhelmed by data or who gets health anxiety, do not do the Neko test. It is so much information, from your grip strength to your blood markers to your moles. There is just so much there that you could fixate on, and I genuinely think it could be quite triggering for people with health anxiety. But for someone who just wants to get healthier, I found it fascinating. I absolutely love the whole experience. I think the way that they made it feel so premium and yet clinical, I think is really, really something so many health tech brands could learn from. I also think that the NHS could absolutely benefit for bringing in some of the tactics that Neko used to make this a really sticky experience. I haven't tried my over 40 NHS health test, but I have tried Neko because I can see that the benefit I'm going to get from this, it's going to be about making me healthier. It's not going to be punitive. And I really think that some of those tactics, as well as the very practical things around Neko being bookable online and reschedulable, is really, really important for the National Health Service to consider if they want people to take up these tests. The only real gap for me is that it doesn't include hormone monitoring. And as a woman, I think that is so important to include. And I probably would have paid extra for that to be included, although I might have been a bit irritated that I did have to pay more as a woman than a man. But just because I know that hormone monitoring is so important, I would have found that a really helpful add-on if they could have included that. But Neko is really impressive tech. They're adding to it all the time and constantly evolving what's included within the test. So I'm pretty confident they'll add that in future. Overall, I'd give Neko an easy 9 out of 10. I'll be reviewing more experiences like this in future, so let me know if there is anything you think I should try. But if you're building or buying in health tech, this series is for you.